The cold wind blew across the metal streets of the mining colony on Zaytanine. Dust swirled in the air, mixing with snow and bits of broken garbage. Most people kept their heads down, rushing to get home before nightfall. But Jack, a quiet human technician, was walking slower than usual. He had just finished a long shift fixing a broken oxygen pump and was carrying a small lunchbox with half a sandwich left inside. As he turned the corner of an old service alley, he heard a soft sound. Like someone digging, he paused and looked. There, near a rusty trash bin, was a figure. At first, he thought it was a child, but then he saw the long limbs, the thin arms, and the glowing blue skin. It was an alien woman, crouched down. Searching the trash for food, she wore a torn brown cloak, barely covering her shivering body. Her silver hair was tangled and fell over her face. Her hands trembled as she picked up a moldy piece of bread, sniffed it, and then dropped it with a quiet sigh. She was starving, clearly weak, and yet no one else around seemed to care. Jack's feet stopped moving. Something inside his chest twisted. He didn't know what it was, but it pulled at him hard. He stepped closer and said gently, "Hey, are you all right?" The alien woman froze. Slowly, she looked up at him, and Jack's breath caught in his throat. Her eyes, large and silver, were full of something he couldn't describe. Fear, pain, hunger, and something else too. Something like hope. She didn't speak, only stared at him, breathing fast. Jack crouched down and opened his lunchbox. He pulled out the half sandwich and offered it to her. "It's not much, but it's fresh," he said softly. "You can have it." She didn't move for a few seconds. Then, slowly, with shaking hands, she reached out and took it. She bit into the bread like it was the first food she had seen in days. Jack sat on the ground beside her, watching in silence. After a few minutes, she looked at him again, her lips moving slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracked and dry. Jack smiled. "You're welcome," he replied. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" She shook her head slowly. Jack hesitated, then stood up. "My place isn't far. It's not much, but it's warm, and you can eat properly." The alien woman blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. He held out his hand. "You can come with me if you want." She looked at his hand, then at his face. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she reached up and placed her hand in his. It was cold ice cold and small compared to his. They walked together through the narrow streets. Jack didn't speak much, and she didn't either. But he noticed her eyes moving constantly, as if expecting someone to jump out and take her back. When they reached his cabin, he opened the door and let her step inside. It was a small place, just one bed, a heater, and a simple kitchen. But it was safe, and it was warm. She stepped in slowly, looking around like she had entered a dream. Jack handed her a blanket. "You can sit, rest. I'll make soup." She nodded, clutching the blanket tightly around her. Jack moved around the kitchen, heating up a can of vegetable stew. He watched her out of the corner of his eye. She didn't sit like a normal guest. She sat on the floor near the heater, knees to her chest, eyes wide. He brought her the soup, and she took it with both hands, whispering, "So warm." Jack smiled again, feeling a strange warmth in his own chest. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused, then said softly, Sira," Jack repeated, letting the name roll off his tongue. It sounded delicate, beautiful. "I'm Jack," he said. "And you're safe here?" She looked at him with those silver eyes again. And this time, the hunger in them was not just for food, was for safety, for kindness, for something she had not felt in a long time. As she finished the soup, her shoulders relaxed slightly. But deep inside, Jack knew this was not over. He could feel it in the way she looked at the door, as if someone was still chasing her, still watching, outside, in the shadows near the alley. A figure tapped a communicator and whispered, "The lost one has been found." Jack stood at the kitchen counter, watching the alien woman as she finished her bowl of soup. Her name, Sira, echoed in his mind like a quiet song. She sat curled on the floor near the heater, her blanket tight around her thin body. She looked cleaner now, warmer, but still afraid, still ready to run at any sound outside. The wind howled through the metal streets of the colony. Inside, Jack's small cabin glowed with soft yellow light, the heater humming gently. He pulled out another can of food. Not because he was hungry, but because he didn't want her to feel alone. "You can use the shower if you want," he offered, keeping his voice low. "There's a towel in the drawer." Sira hesitated, like she didn't understand the kindness, then slowly nodded, stood up, and moved toward the back room. Jack watched her go, eyes scanning the bruises on her arms and the faint marks on her ankles. They weren't from accidents. They looked like they came from shackles. He exhaled deeply, fingers gripping the edge of the counter. Something about her didn't feel random. She wasn't just a runaway or some beggar from a nearby colony. She looked like someone who had escaped something. Something big. 10 minutes passed, and he heard the water running. Jack sat at the small table, tapping his fingers, thinking, why would someone so beaten, so lost, be wandering alone in a trash alley on Zitani? Why did she speak with such hesitation, like every word was dangerous? Then came the knock, a hard, loud, angry knock. Jack froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. Not at this hour. He stood up slowly, walked to the door, and looked through the side panel. 2 men stood there, rough looking, both with guns holstered, one with a long scar across his face. The man with the scar banged on the door again. "We know she's in there," he growled. "Open up." Jack didn't move. "Who are you?" he asked firmly through the door. "Security?" The scarred man smirked. "We're retrieval, pal. She's stolen property. Escaped last week from auction. She's not property," Jack snapped. Pulse rising. "She's a person." The second man stepped forward, voice colder. "She's tagged. We've got the claim papers if you don't hand her over." "You're interfering with a legal process?" Jack didn't believe them. They weren't lawmen. They looked like bounty thugs working for one of the black market slave rings. And Sira, he remembered how she flinched when he touched her wrist. The way she stared at the door like she knew they were coming. "She's not here," Jack lied. "Try somewhere else," the scarred man sneered. "Last warning, human. We'll be backhand next time." "We don't knock." Jack waited until they were gone, then locked the door, bolted the window, and pulled down the shades. A sound came from behind him. Sira stood there, wrapped in a clean towel, wet hair dripping onto the floor, her eyes wide, terrified. "You heard them?" he asked gently. She nodded. "They followed me from the station." "Who are they?" "Hunters," she whispered. "They sell people like me." Jack swallowed hard, anger rising in his chest. "You were in an auction." Sira nodded again, slowly, her voice shaking. "They took me after my ship crashed. They branded me. I escaped during a fire at the market." Jack stepped forward, keeping his tone soft. "You're safe here, all right. I won't let them take you." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" "You don't even know me." Jack gave a small, tired smile. "You looked at me like you still believed someone might care." She lowered her head, her hands gripping the towel tighter. "No one ever has," she whispered. He turned toward the small bedroom and pointed. "There's a change of clothes on the bed. I'll make you more food." She didn't move right away, but after a moment, she walked slowly into the room and shut the door. Jack returned to the table, rubbing his face with both hands. He had just made enemies with men who didn't care about law. And for what? A girl he had known for just a few hours. But deep down, he already knew the answer. It wasn't about time. It was about truth. Sierra needed someone to fight for her, and Jackie was tired of pretending he didn't care anymore. He had seen too much cruelty in this colony. Too much silence from good people. This time, he would not stay silent. Even if it cost him everything, even if it meant running, hiding, protecting her with his life, and outside, hidden on the roof of a nearby building. The scarred man tapped a COM device. She's confirmed. Preparing to breach tomorrow night. The next morning came heavy and cold. A thick gray fog covered the mining colony like a blanket, making it hard to see beyond a few feet. Jack stood near the window, holding a warm cup of synth coffee, his eyes fixed on the empty alley outside. But he didn't feel calm, not even for a second. Behind him, Sierra sat quietly on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, wearing the clean clothes he had given her. Her silver eyes flickered with worry every time she heard a sound. Her voice was soft, like a whisper that could disappear in the wind. "I should leave," she said suddenly. "They'll come again, and they'll hurt you." Jack turned, his voice firm. "You're not leaving. I don't want you to get hurt." "Then don't run, Sierra," he replied, kneeling beside her. "You've run enough." She lowered her head, hiding behind her long silver hair. "They always find me," she whispered. "And when they do, they sell me again." Jack clenched his fists, the heat rising in his chest. Not this time, he thought. Not while I'm still breathing. There was a knock, soft and steady. Not like the one from last night. Jack tensed, placed the cup down, and moved toward the door, through the side panel. He saw the same two men from before this time, with a third one standing behind them. The third man wore a smooth jacket with a golden badge on his chest, a fake lawman. Most likely a hired enforcer. Jack opened the door just a little. Keeping the chain lock in place, the scarred man smirked again. "Morning, friend," he said. "We're back." As promised, the third man stepped forward, speaking in a voice too calm, too fake. "This is an official colony matter, sir. The woman inside is claimed property under Section 9-4. Runaway slave, auction record confirmed." Jack narrowed his eyes. "I don't recognize Section 9-4. You don't need to." "Citizen," the man replied, showing a data pad with flashing red symbols. "It's above civilian access. I don't care what it says," Jack said flatly. "She's not leaving with you," the fake lawman sighed, as if disappointed. "You do realize harboring stolen property could get your mining permit revoked, or worse." "She's not property," Jack snapped. "She's a person. And she's under my protection." The scarred man leaned forward, growling, "This is your last chance, human. Open the door, or we come back with force." Jack stared at him through the gap. Unblinking, then slowly, he said the words that changed everything. "No, she stays." The door slammed shut. The lock clicked, and silence followed, inside. Sierra had heard every word. Her body shook, not from cold, but from something else, disbelief. "No one ever said no for me before," she whispered, voice breaking. Jack looked at her. His own voice, softer now. Well, someone should have. A long time ago, he walked over to a metal box near the wall, opened it, and pulled out an old energy pistol. "I've never used this before," he admitted, "but I'll learn fast if I have to." Sierra stood slowly, her hands trembling. "You'll be hunted too. They'll mark you as a traitor." "I'd rather be marked than live as a coward," Jack replied. "Loading the pistol, we're not staying here tonight. We'll head to the North Ridge. There's an old tunnel that leads to the transport yard." Sierra looked at him with something new in her eyes. Not fear, not pain, but something close to trust. Maybe even something like hope. They packed fast blankets, food, Jack's toolkit, a spare heater core, and some water pouches. Jack wrapped Sierra in a heavier coat, one that hid her glowing blue skin and silver hair. The moment the sun dipped below the horizon, they slipped out the back door. Every shadow made them flinch. Every sound made them pause. Jack kept his hand near the pistol, heart pounding with each step. They moved through the edge of the colony, past empty mining rigs and storage yards. The North Ridge was 2 kilometers away, but it felt like 100. Halfway there, they heard the sound of engines. Jack looked up and saw a small scout drone hovering in the sky. Its red eye blinking down, he whispered, pulling Sarah into a pile of old crates. The drone hovered for a moment, scanned the area, then zoomed off toward the center of the colony. "They know we're moving," Jack said, breathing hard. "We have to reach the tunnel," Sarah replied. "There's no going back." Jack nodded. Gripping her hand, "We'll make it," he said. Together, but as they disappeared into the icy night. Far behind them, a voice echoed from a hidden communicator. "Target has moved north. Send the hunters." The ice storm began just as they reached the first marker on the ridge. Sharp winds roared like angry wolves through the metal bones of old mining towers. Snowflakes turned into sharp crystals, stinging their skin and blinding their eyes. Jack pulled his scarf tighter and leaned over Sarah, shielding her as much as he could. "We have to keep moving," he shouted over the wind. "We're almost at the tunnel." Sarah nodded, her teeth chattering, her hands gripping the strap of the bag Jack had given her. Behind them, the sky glowed red for a second of flare. "Fired from one of the hunters' scout ships. They're tracking us," Sarah whispered. Fear flashing in her silver eyes. Jack didn't look back. "Let them try," he growled. "We'll be gone before they reach us." The snow was getting deeper now. Burying their boots with every step, Jack used a metal pole to test the ground ahead, making sure they didn't step into a hidden pit or broken vent. Sarah moved close behind him, quiet, focused, determined. This wasn't the same broken girl he had found in the alley. This was someone who had tasted hope and didn't want to lose it again. As they climbed the last hill before the tunnel entrance, a sharp buzzing filled the air. Jack looked up and cursed 2 drones were circling above. Red lights scanned the ground, searching for movement. "We need to break line of sight," Jack said, pulling Sarah toward a cluster of broken cargo crates. They ducked behind the metal pile just in time the drones passed overhead. "But didn't stop. They'll send the hunters soon," Sarah whispered. "Armed ones? I'm armed too," Jack replied, tapping the pistol hidden under his coat. They stayed hidden for a few minutes until the sky grew quiet again. Then Jack stood, pulled Sarah up, and they ran the last 100 meters to the tunnel. It was old, rusted, half buried in ice, but it was there. Just like he remembered, a transport tunnel built decades ago. No longer on any official maps. Jack pried the hatch open, sparks flying from his tool. The heavy metal door creaked, then slid back with a groan, revealing a dark passage beyond. "No turning back now," he said. Stepping inside, Sarah followed. Her breathing heavy but steady. Inside, the tunnel was freezing. But at least it blocked the storm. Jack turned on his wrist light. Casting a pale blue glow across the walls, old transport rails lined the floor. And frost clung to every surface. They walked fast, their footsteps echoing down the endless steel corridor. "This tunnel goes under the colony, right?" Sarah asked softly. Jack nodded. "Yes. Comes out near the old fuel station. We can find transport there, maybe get off-world. Do you really believe we can escape?" "I have to," he answered. "For you." She looked at him then. Her face lit softly by the wrist light. Something passed between them, spoken but real. She didn't say thank you, and he didn't need her to. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the tunnel, a sharp, metallic clang. Jack froze, raised the pistol, and motioned for Sarah to stay behind him. Another sound closer, this time. Then a voice, distorted through a speaker. "You're surrounded, human. Surrender the alien," from both ends of the tunnel. Heavy footsteps approached. 4 armed hunters emerged from the shadows. Weapons drawn, lights glowing red, Jack stood tall, aiming his pistol at the one nearest. "You'll have to go through me," he said. His voice cold, the lead hunter laughed. "You think we won't shoot you?" "You might," Jack said, "but one of you is going with me." Suddenly, Sierra stepped forward, standing beside Jack. Her hands glowed faintly blue symbols lighting up along her arms and neck. The hunters paused, confused. "What is that?" One of them asked, backing up slightly. "She's not what you think," Jack said. "She's not some slave, she's royalty," Sierra said softly, voice echoing unnaturally in the tunnel. The symbols pulsed, the air shimmered, and the tunnel lights flickered. The hunters hesitated, clearly not trained for this. "She's awakened," one of them whispered. "She's one of the lost bloodline, fall back," another shouted. "We weren't told she was powered," in seconds. The hunters retreated, drowning through the tunnel like rats escaping fire. Jack lowered the pistol, heart still pounding. He turned to Sierra, eyes wide. "What was that?" he asked, voice shaking slightly. "I don't know," she said. "It only happens when I'm scared. Or protecting someone." Jack stared at her glowing skin, then gently touched her hand. "You don't have to be scared anymore," he said. "You're not alone now." They stood there for a moment. In the quiet of the tunnel, the storm still roared above. But down here, in the shadows and frost, something had changed. She wasn't just the alien girl he had fed, and he wasn't just a stranger anymore. They were bound by something stronger than fear. Something stronger than escape. They were choosing each other. The tunnel felt quieter now. As if the air itself had taken a breath, Jack and Sierra walked slowly, their footsteps echoing through the icy passage. Sierra's arms still glowed faintly with symbols. Soft blue light dancing under her skin. Jack kept looking at them, puzzled, curious. What do they mean? He finally asked. Sierra looked down at the glowing lines on her hands and wrists. "I don't fully know," she whispered. "They only appear when I'm scared, or angry, or—" She hesitated, eyes turning to Jack. "Safe," she finished softly. Jack stopped walking, the light from his wrist device shining on her arms. He leaned closer, examining the symbols, circles, curves, and markings that didn't look random. "These are not just lights," he said. "They're writing." Sierra nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "My mother told me, before she was taken, that these marks were ancient, sacred. They show up in moments of truth." Jack stared at her in disbelief. "You mean, like a bloodline marker?" She looked away, her voice shaking. "I was told long ago that my family belonged to something old, something powerful, but when the war came, my people were killed, scattered, sold. I don't know who I am anymore." Jack touched her shoulder gently. "You're Sierra," he said firmly. "And that's enough." She looked at him with glassy eyes, tears she didn't let fall. But the warmth in her chest was something new, something she hadn't felt in years. They kept walking, and soon the tunnel opened into a large abandoned transport bay. Rusty cargo crates were stacked around, and the air smelled of cold metal and oil. Jack spotted an old maintenance room with a heater panel still glowing. "We'll rest here for a while," he said. "You need food, and I need answers." Inside, Jack set up the portable heater while Sierra sat on a crate. Wrapping herself in a thermal blanket, Jack handed her a food pack, then activated a scanner on his wrist pad. He pointed it gently at the markings on her skin. The device beeped softly, then displayed a result. Language, Eldari Royal Script. The screen said. Jack frowned. Eldari, that's the ancient empire that disappeared 200 years ago. Sierra nodded slowly. That's what my mother called Ussel-Dari. Jack sat down, eyes wide. Do you know what that means, Sierra? You're not just a survivor, you're a princess. Or something like it. Sierra shook her head, her voice tired. I don't want to be a princess. Jack, I just want to live, quietly, without being hunted. Without chains, Jack looked at her, feeling a weight in his chest. You're not going to live in fear anymore, he said. I promise. They ate quietly, but the silence was deep. Filled with thoughts, neither of them could speak. Jack's mind raced if Sira was truly Eldari. The hunters wouldn't stop. They wouldn't want her for money, they'd want her for power. Then the lights flickered. A soft beeping came from the motion sensor Jack had placed at the tunnel entrance. His heart skipped. He stood, grabbed his pistol, and motioned for Sarah to stay quiet. Voices echoed through the tunnel, muffled, distant, but drawing closer. Jack peeked through a crack in the metal wall and saw two dark figures moving fast. Armed, armored, speaking in coded bursts through headsets. They found us, Jack whispered. Sira stood slowly and without a word. The symbols on her skin began to glow brighter, this time. The glow reached up her neck and across her face like shining tattoos. Jack stared, mesmerized. Sira closed her eyes and whispered in a strange language. Suddenly, the lights in the bay pulsed, and then dimmed. A strange hum filled the air, like energy building inside her. Outside, the two hunters stopped and looked around, confused. Their lights flickered. Their scanners glitched. One of them panicked. She's activated it. Pull back. Pulled back, they ran, shouting into their comms. Disappearing into the shadows, Sira collapsed to her knees. Breathing hard, Jack rushed to her. Helping her sit up. Are you all right? He asked. She nodded slowly. It drains me. But it scares them. Jack looked at her. Then, at the glowing markings. Maybe that's your strength. Sira, they think you're weak, but they're terrified of what's inside you. She looked up at him. Eyes shimmering. Do you believe I'm dangerous? Jack shook his head. I believe you're powerful, he said softly, and kind, and brave, and maybe meant for something more. She smiled, then just a little. And in that smile, Jack saw something beautiful. Something real. Not a princess, not a slave, just Sira. The woman who had once searched trash for food. Now glowing with power in a forgotten tunnel, he helped her to her feet. We're leaving this place tomorrow, he said. No more running, no more hiding. She nodded. Her hand reaching for his, together. She asked, always, Jack whispered, and in the flickering light of the heater, the human and the alien girl stood hand in hand, with storm behind them and destiny ahead. Asterisk, the morning sky burned orange, but not from sunlight. A ship was descending, fast and heavy, its engines roaring like thunder. Jack and Sira stood at the edge of the abandoned transport yard. Staring up as the black vessel hovered above the snow-covered ground, it wasn't a rescue ship. And it wasn't here by accident. Jack clenched his fists, his hand resting on the pistol strapped to his belt. Sira stood beside him, quiet, her eyes watching the sky. This isn't a scout ship, Jack muttered. That's a hunter-class dropship. They brought soldiers this time, Sira whispered. They won't speak, they'll shoot, behind them. The tunnel exit closed with a loud clang. Locking away their only shelter, they had nowhere to run now. Only one way forward, through the storm. The ship landed hard, blowing snow and ash in every direction. Its side hatch opened with a hiss. And 6 armored figures stepped out, faces hidden behind metal masks. Their weapons were glowing red, aimed already, moving as one. Jack raised his pistol, his heart pounding. Sira took a deep breath, and the symbols on her skin began to glow again. Brighter than before, the wind picked up, swirling around them like it could feel the tension. One of the soldiers stepped forward and spoke through a voice filter. Alien known as Sarah of the Eldari bloodline. Surrender now, or the human dies, Jack shouted back. She's not going anywhere with you. She belongs to us, the voice replied. Cold and sharp. No, Jack growled. "She belongs to no one." The soldiers opened fire. Red bolts of plasma shot through the air, melting snow and scorching the ground. Jack dove behind an old fuel cart, pulling Sierra down with him. The sound of energy blasts echoed through the yard like war drums. Jack fired back, hitting one of the soldiers in the shoulder, sending him stumbling. But they kept advancing, silent and ruthless. Sierra crouched beside him, breathing fast, her hands glowing with blue energy. "I can stop them," she said, "but it will hurt." Jack grabbed her hand. "No, not unless you have to. We'll fight together." Sierra looked at him, her voice shaking. "You'll die if I don't, then I die beside you," Jack whispered. "But I won't give you up." Tears formed in her eyes. But she didn't let them fall. Instead, she stood slowly, lifting both hands toward the sky. The symbols on her skin burst into light, and a wave of energy shot from her chest. The wind howled louder, snow turned to mist, and the soldiers paused, their weapons short-circuiting. One of them shouted, "She's triggering the Eldari core." "Fall back," but it was too late. Sierra screamed, not in pain, but in power, her voice shaking the air. A blue pulse exploded from her, knocking the soldiers off their feet. Slamming them into walls and crates, Jack watched in awe, unable to move. Sierra stood in the middle of the yard, glowing like a star, her body surrounded by rings of light. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the light faded. She collapsed to the ground. Unconscious, Jack ran to her, dropping to his knees. "Sierra, wake up. Please," he whispered, shaking her gently. Her eyes fluttered open. Barely did it work. She asked weakly. Jack looked around. The soldiers were down, their weapons scattered. "You saved us," he said. "You saved me?" She gave a weak smile. "I told you. I wouldn't let them take you." Jack held her close, his chest tight, his eyes burning. "I should be the one protecting you," he said. "You did," she whispered. "You believed in me above them." The sky grew quiet again, the storm slowly breaking. Jack looked at the ship, which was damaged. Unable to fly, they had won the fight, but the war wasn't over yet. Someone had sent these soldiers, and someone would send more. He stood up, lifting Sarah in his arms. "You're not a slave. You're not lost. You're not weak," he said softly. "You're mine. And I'll protect you from now on." She rested her head against his chest, her voice barely audible. "Then take me home." Jack didn't know where home was anymore, but as long as she was with him, he knew they could build one. Together, he walked across the snow, carrying the girl who had once been starving in an alley. Now glowing with ancient power, the fire in the sky had passed. But the fire in their hearts was just beginning. The wind had quieted. The storm had passed. Snow still lay thick across the old transport yard. But now it was calm. Jack stood alone for a moment, staring at the sun rising over the hills. Its orange light touched the snow, making everything look like gold. Behind him, in the old maintenance room, Sierra lay resting. She was wrapped in 3 blankets, her breathing soft and even. Her body was still weak from using so much power. But she was safe, and Jack was watching over her. He stepped back into the room and sat beside her. He held her hand gently, watching her fingers twitch in sleep. The glowing symbols on her skin had faded now, but he remembered how they had looked like stars drawn across her body. She stirred, her silver eyes opening slowly. "You're still here," she whispered, her voice tired. "I'm not going anywhere," Jack said, with a small smile. "Good," she replied, "because neither am I." He helped her sit up, and she leaned into his side. Outside, birds were chirping, small creatures that had come back after the storm. It was the first sound of peace either of them had heard in days. "We need to leave this planet," Jack said. "They'll come again, stronger." And they'll know you're alive, Sira nodded slowly. There's a place. Far from here, my people spoke of it hidden in the mountain systems of Aloria. A place where the Eldari once lived in peace. Jack looked into her eyes. Do you think it's real? She smiled, I think. It can be, if we go together. He stood and helped her to her feet. We'll find a way there, even if we have to walk across stars. Sira laughed softly. Her voice warm. You always say dramatic things. Jack shrugged. It's the only way I can keep up with a glowing alien princess. They left the shelter that same day. Took an old hover cart and loaded it with fuel packs. Food, tools, and the few things they had. Jack had salvaged parts from the crashed hunter ship enough to repair a signal transmitter. By nightfall, he had sent out a coded message to an old contact, a smuggler who owed him a favor. The next morning, the ship arrived rusty. Loud but dependable, the smuggler didn't ask questions. Just nodded and let them aboard. He looked at Sira once, then turned to Jack and whispered, She's more than she looks, isn't she? Jack replied, She's everything. They flew for days, jumping from station to station, hiding behind moons and through gravity tunnels. And finally, after crossing a dense asteroid field, they saw it, a green planet, untouched, with golden clouds and high mountains. Eloria Sarah said softly, her voice full of wonder. It's real. They landed near a valley surrounded by glowing trees and clear streams. The land felt alive, and Jack could feel it too. The moment they stepped out, the markings on Sira's skin glowed again, not out of fear, but peace. There were no cities, no machines, just the sound of nature. And in that moment, they knew they had found a place to call home. Weeks passed. Jack built a small cabin with his own hands. Using wood and stone from the land, Sira helped, laughing when the walls fell, clapping when they stood. They cooked together, slept under the stars, and shared stories of things they had lost and found. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Jack lit a small fire outside. Sira sat beside him, her silver hair shining like threads of light. She held something in her hand, simple ring carved from the wood of a tree they had planted together. In my culture, she said quietly, this means bond. If I give it to someone, it means one choose them not as a protector, she continued, but as a partner, as a mate. Jack looked at her. Surprised but smiling, she offered him the ring and her hand. I don't have a crown or a throne, or a name that matters anymore, she said, but I have you. And that's all I want. Jack took the ring, placed it on his finger, and pulled her close. And I have you, he said. That's more than I ever dreamed of. They sat by the fire, side by side, two souls from different worlds, brought together by hunger, by danger, by kindness, and now by love. The stars above them shimmered. The wind carried their laughter through the trees. And in the heart of the valley, a new life began. Not as a prisoner and her savior, not as a fugitive and a fighter, but as to people who found something rare and precious, a home built for two.